Welcome to Let's Talk Antigonish, the podcast where we sit down with neighbors, experts, and friends to explore the stories, the questions, and the big little issues that shape life in our town, one conversation at a time. This week, we're speaking with Antigonish's own Senator Mary Coyle to figure out what it is that a senator does. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Antigonish. It's me, one of your co-hosts, Justin.
And this is Anuj.
The other co-host guy.
Yeah.
And we're very excited. It is the period between Christmas and New Year when the world, nobody knows what day of the week it is and that sort of thing. So we could have gone dead as a podcast, but instead, we caught a very big fish.
Biggest.
Yes, biggest fish. Yes, we are seated here at our table in the library with the Honorable Senator Mary Coyle. Mary, hello.
Hello, Justin. Hello, Anuj.
Yeah.
So lovely.
So we are here to ask you lots of questions about being a senator. I think that's it. And because we were discussing before, like, what do we ask you about? And I think the number one thing is most people are kind of confused as to what the Senate does and what a senator does, I have to say. So before we get into the sort of the your personal background, and which is fascinating, can you just briefly explain what is the Senate, how does it function, and what does a senator do? Briefly.
Well, I'll be very brief.
Sure.
I don't want to put anyone to sleep now, but it's actually very exciting. I've been a senator for 8 years now, and so I'm starting to catch on.
Okay, that's great.
And we have till we're 75, and then we must retire.
I know that's a fact. So is that your plan? Is that what most senators do? They stay on until 75?
Most do, but you can retire at any point before then.
Okay.
But on your 75th birthday, you are out.
You are out. And this is your current plan, hanging on?
That's, of course, my current plan.
I have no idea what your age is. I'm assuming 38.
Don't
so
go
you
there.
probably got
Don't go there.
You've
Don't
got a
go
while. You're here for a while.
Hey, listen, I'm a happy 71-year-old.
Is that really true?
It's very true.
Wow, I actually would never have guessed that. That's
And I
crazy.
made it to 71, and that's a good thing. So, no, the Senate of Canada is the upper chamber of Canada's Parliament. The House of Commons, which is the elected house where you have your members of Parliament, is the lower house, and we are the upper house. We are an appointed house, and we play exactly the same function as the lower house in that we primarily are legislators. So every law of the land, every law of Canada, has to go through 3 readings in both houses and has to pass both houses before it gets royal assent. So that's our primary job in the Senate is legislation. And I can get into what kind of legislation whenever you want. In addition to that, senators represent. So I represent the province of Nova Scotia along with 9 colleagues. So out of the 105 senators that there are in the Senate of Canada, 10 come from the province of Nova Scotia. I'm very excited that I happen to be also from the town of Antigonish because it's been a while since there's been anyone from Antigonish representing Nova Scotia in the Senate of Canada. And then the final thing that we do, in addition to representing our province, but plus the voices that are often not heard. Mm-hmm. It's our special job to make sure those are represented in Canada's Parliament because we do not have to get reelected in the Senate of Canada, and we don't worry about election cycles the same way the lower house does. We are there for the benefit of the Canadian people, all the Canadian people, no matter who they are. And then the final thing we do, legislate, represent, is we investigate. Mm-hmm. So a big part of our job is to look around, what are the issues that are of burning concern to Canada and to our world? So I sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I sit on the Human Rights Committee, I sit on the Library of Parliament Committee, I have spent 7 years on the Indigenous Peoples Committee, I sat on the Fisheries and Oceans Committee and was on the Special Committee on the Arctic. So there's all kinds of issues you can imagine that our committees delve into very deeply that are of great importance to Canadians.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. Let's start with the representation thing because I find that fascinating. So the idea of the Senate when it was started, if I'm understanding this correctly, was that you are representing regions, unlike the elected officials who are representing populations, and it's based on numbers of people. The idea, I think at the time in Confederation was like, okay, we have these pockets of large groups of people, and we don't want to forget about the outlying unifying smaller communities. So you are representing a region in that sense.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't so much the benevolence of those larger regions. It was the regions with the smaller populations that said, we're not joining.
Okay.
So New Brunswick and Nova Scotia said, hey, we don't want to be swallowed up by Upper Canada and Lower Canada, right? Quebec and Ontario, okay, you're going to have a very big representation in the House of Commons because of your representation by population. We want a larger than proportional representation in the Senate. So the province of Quebec, the province of Ontario, each have 24 senators, and we have 10.
Yeah, proportionally, that's a very large percentage compared to the population.
And we have to remind people that Nova Scotia would have never agreed to join Confederation if that were not part of the bargain.
It's beyond mathematics in some ways. So going back to, I think, the number of committees you mentioned, that's a lot of very different, deep, complex subjects. And you said earlier you have been here for 8 years. How was it? How was that learning experience to dig deeper into all of those 7, 8, 9 committees that you have been part of? From climate change to Indigenous groups to all that you mentioned. Tell us a little bit of your experience as a senator.
Yeah, well, that job of investigate. Our committees do two things, right? The committees, you study the laws, right? The bills before they become law, in a very thorough and rigorous way. So that is the main job of committees, is to study laws. The other is to study issues. And so when I was on the Fisheries and Oceans Committee, for example, we studied the Coast Guard. Looking at search and rescue and what that looked like in a changing environment due to climate change. Same with our Arctic Special Committee on the Arctic. And this was my first committee. Actually, was a special committee on the Arctic, and now the Arctic has all kinds of prominence and importance because of security issues and sovereignty issues. But when we studied the Arctic, those were two issues that we raised in addition to environmental issues, but also very much making sure that the people of the Arctic are the masters of their own destiny, so that anything that's going to happen in the Arctic has to be done by and with the people of the Arctic, leading the way.
So paint me a picture. What does it mean to study? Let's say a bill is you're looking at it, you're now investigating it. So you're talking to a group of people somewhere in a room. Are you then going home and Googling things? Are you getting people on the phone and asking them their opinion? What does it mean to investigate?
Or witnesses that you actually call for your committee?
Yeah.
Well, that's all a part of the story.
Right.
So in committee, let's just look at the example of the the law that brought in the alignment of Canada's laws with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, for example. So I was on the Indigenous Peoples Committee twice when that bill, there were two different, I think there were three, but I was there for two of them. The one that was a private member's bill that didn't make it all the way, and then the one that was a government bill that did finally make it all the way. So what we do is we bring in, invite witnesses who have a stake in this particular law, and we'll have a position on it and what they think needs to be considered, changed if possible. We do in the Senate of Canada, a lot of what we do is improvements to bills, not so much rejection of bills that come from the elected House, but where there might be a chance to improve upon a bill, make an amendment that will improve it. Not to overly amend just because we have the power to do that, but to improve it. So yes, so people from the, of course, the Assembly of First Nations, different rights holders would be, Indigenous rights holders would be called in. We'd have the government come and represent their position to us. We'd have people that were fighting for decades at the United Nations for UNDRIP, for the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, talk about their timeline and talk about how UNDRIP has been made law in other countries. And so it's Canadians that we're talking to, it's Indigenous leaders and Indigenous people and communities, but it's also looking at what the international experience is. We do a lot of research in our offices, and we have staff that help us do our research. The Library of Parliament presents incredibly substantial research for the committee. So we have analysts on each committee who are specialists for those committees, and they give us that important information, and we reach out to Canadians. And then, of course, Canadians reach out to us. Mm-hmm. So it's a two-way street. So we're responding from those demands for us to hear their perspective.
So when a witness comes in, is that coming in to talk to the committee or the Senate at large?
No. Actually, there's two things. In general, in most cases, it's to the committee.
Okay.
And it might be, actually, since COVID, it's been more and more online.
That makes sense.
But we still get witnesses in person as well. And before COVID, it was far more in person. So it's now a mixture of the two. Your question about in the Senate chamber is an interesting one, because sometimes laws, the desire of the government is to pass a bill into law quicker because it's urgent. For instance, Bill C-5, the Bill on Building Canada Act. Now, that one did not go to committee.
Okay.
We had what was called Committee of the Whole, where the whole Senate chamber receives witnesses.
Okay.
And can question those witnesses in front of all senators.
But that's less common.
That's far less common, and we don't encourage it because you don't get the same level of rigor done at the committee level, and then the committee having to present its findings and stand behind it to the whole chamber, where they've done a really thorough study. Then we hold the committee members to account when they bring their results forward and want us to pass it with or without amendment.
So one of the quirks that I have is I watch CPAC quite a bit, which actually does live telecast of some of the committee proceedings. And I have seen you in a couple of committees live. And what my understanding is that lawmaking is not a straight line. It's a lot of gives and takes, and forks in the road that you have to really decide. It's not always clear, what weightage you have to give to one issue, the other. Give us a sense of how do senators make that decision in this committee? Are there divisions of opinion, how to make it? And what has been some of your learnings in making those decisions?
Yeah. Well, one piece of advice I was given when I was a new senator was don't vote with your buddies. Stay independent. Talk to your colleagues, obviously, take their opinions on, but make sure the decision, the way you vote, is true to, your own sense of what the right thing is to do. Now, I'm an independent senator. We haven't talked about that yet. Since Justin Trudeau, actually before Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister, he had a vision for an independent Senate so that it would be less partisan. Right now, out of 105 seats, not all of which are filled, there are, I believe, 12 or 13 that are held by partisan Conservatives. The Conservative caucus is the only remaining caucus. Now, there are 5 people who represent the government, but they are unaffiliated, is what they're described. And I'm in the largest independent group, which is called the Independent Senators Group. So there's no whipping. Mm-hmm. There's no saying you must vote this way. And actually, the Conservatives don't always whip either. They whip on certain bills, but not all bills. And it's an interesting dynamic. And one time it was quite interesting because it looked very much, and this was in 2 or 3 parliaments ago, a government bill was not going to be passed in the Senate. And our Conservative colleagues were concerned about this. They would have voted against it, but they saw what was happening, and they actually stood and voted in favor of it so that it wouldn't be voting against the will of the government. So it's interesting times in the Senate of Canada. And one of the great things, both of you were asking about this, this variety of things we get to study that are of incredible importance to our country and to our world. My brain's on fire all day, every day, and it's just the way I like it. And I'm pushed and pulled in directions I never would have imagined. I've had to sponsor bills in the Senate. Sponsored one on offshore tax havens, one on border information.
So sponsoring is because you're not introducing bills in the Senate. That's only coming from the House of Commons. So what is what is sponsoring? I'm confused on that point.
Two things.
Okay.
So three things actually. So for government bills, okay, most bills are government bills, and government bills are our top priority, right, as legislators. So most government bills come from the House to the Senate. Some government bills, a small number of them, originate in the Senate.
Oh, they do?
And that will happen when the government's trying to manage the timelines around its legislative agenda. So if it makes sense, if there's a big number of them over here in the House that are being introduced and nothing yet has come to the Senate, well, then let's introduce one or two through the Senate, okay? So there's two ways. Then there are what are called Senate public bills, which are like private members' bills. Okay. So any senator can introduce a bill.
Okay.
And there's one right now there are many right now. There's one on guaranteed livable basic income right now. Just for example, there's one on putting the brakes on advertising sports betting to youth. There's a whole variety of these that are coming from the Senate, and some of those actually make it into law.
Okay. And so you've introduced, that's what sponsoring is.
Sponsoring. So if I'm a sponsor of a private member's bill or a Senate public bill, as it's called, it's my bill.
Okay.
If it's a government bill, it's not my bill. I've just agreed to be the sponsor in the Senate.
Got
so
it.
I had agreed to be the sponsor of the chemical weapons bill. I had agreed to be the sponsor of the new bill on lost Canadians. So it looked at citizenship for those who had lost it or who didn't.
Which recently passed.
Which recently passed, yeah.
Wow. And so again, I think going back to one conversation that I had with you, I felt very educated in that around euthanasia. And that came up in one of the conversations that you were part of. I'm not wanting you to just zero down on that, but any issue that is not very clear-cut in your mind as a senator, as you are debating and as you are listening to witnesses, how do you make up your mind? What goes into it? Give us a sense of that process.
Yeah, well, for instance, medical assistance in dying. I was part of the expansion of the right to medical assistance dying beyond people who were terminally ill. So the first cut was people who are terminally ill. The second was people who had conditions that were causing suffering and were not going to get better. I'm going to avoid the legal language, right? And it was a tough one, that one, because, there was representation, and I sought out representation from, for instance, L'Arche here in Antigonish. Quite a number of people, not all, but quite a number of people in the disabilities community were concerned that the value of the life of a person with a disability would be lost with possibly with this, and it'd be too easy to get access to medical assistance in dying when people maybe just needed better care, or they needed housing, or they needed better income. So these were very real issues, and then the people, of course, who brought this forward and brought it forward to the higher courts were people, who said, no, this suffering is too much for me, and I should have a right because I'm not going to get better. I'm suffering now, and nothing is working for me, and so you're balancing these very real issues, and I wanted to understand, how does that play out in my own community as well as across the country?
Just on that, I think, and that's where I think, so what does it mean to be a senator from Antigonish? And we are speaking to Antigonishers right now.
Yeah.
Great question.
And so I think you just hinted at, how you draw upon some of your lived experience in Antigonish, be it L'Arche, be it others. Explain that a little bit to us. What does it mean to be a senator from Antigonish?
Well, first of all, if the Senate had never heard of Antigonish, they certainly know about it now. I'm a very proud Antigonisher. As you know, I'm an Antigonish by choice, an ABC. I came here 29 years ago to run the Coady International Institute, and then I was a VP at the university and ran the McKenna Center for a while. And I'm a very proud member of this community. I have 5 grandchildren living in this community. Two of my 3 daughters live in this community, and I feel very fortunate. I came for 5 years, and here I am 29 years later. So what does it mean? So when, for instance, we had the opportunity to honor 20 people with King Charles III coronation medals, I could have given those to anybody, anywhere in Canada. And some of my colleagues did that. And I decided right here in my own town and county of Antigonish, there were so many people worthy of honoring that I would focus my honoring on them and shine a light on the contributions of people who might not necessarily be known at the national level. Some might be, but that doesn't matter. These are people worthy of honoring. So I try to do that kind of focus. I'm doing a number of things right now with the Mulroney Institute at St. of X. Coming right up in January will be a panel on the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly. I'm the co-chair and co-founder of Senators for Climate Solutions.
Wow.
So working with them and also working with Seniors for Climate, trying to bring that intergenerational dialogue forward on these critical issue of climate. What we're trying to do with Senators for Climate Solutions is bring people together. The last thing we need is polarization on climate. Climate is everybody's concern.
Shared issue.
So, for instance, the last panel we just had for Senators for Climate Solutions is just to bring our expertise level on all things climate as senators up, so that we're well-informed legislators, was on health and climate. So what are the impacts of climate on health at different ages in different parts of our country, and what are the solutions out there? And we focus on solutions. Senators for Climate Solutions is solutions agnostic, even though all of us will have very strongly held positions on nuclear or carbon capture and storage or some of the things that are a little more controversial. But we try to expose our colleagues to all aspects of climate solutions that are out there. I really feel very strongly that it's important to create that big tent more than anything else, to have a place for everybody to feel comfortable to be part of it. And we did that with intention, and we were successful in having senators from all regions of the country and all corners of the chamber join us. So that's a big thing for me.
So I'm interested because when you're an elected official, you have to worry about the party and the party's ideology and being whipped, etc. And the point of the Senate is you're supposed to be independent thinkers. And so what you're describing sounds like a group of very independent people thinking about the problem without worry of re-election. That's the goal of since 2016, the way the Senate works. Do you feel like that is working? Because it sounds very much like it is doing its job of being an independent body.
It is. I mean, is it perfect? I mean, in a lot of ways, the big change in the Senate came about with the appointment process. So I had to apply for it. It was like applying for a job. Applying quite a rigorous application process, I must say, and it took months before I was appointed.
I know. I want you to answer this question, but why did you apply? Like, what did you? Because you've done so many things, and I always wonder, like, when you're in government, it can feel like you're not accomplishing things, whereas you have a long track record of accomplishing things. What inspired you?
Well, I think it was just stage of life. I was excited about the independence of the Senate. I would have never been a senator under, and I'm not saying that there weren't fantastic senators under the partisan system, which preceded my appointment. Very good senators doing very good work, but it just would not have been me because I'm not a fierce partisan, and I would have been very unlikely to be appointed.
So the independence attracted you.
It was very attractive to me, and one thing most Canadians don't know about is that yes, we are now on a track to be a far more independent Senate, which we believe is the original intention of it. But the work isn't done. So the independent process for appointments is in place, which is functioning. But the chamber and all the rules is still set up to a large extent to be a bipartisan chamber. And so a lot of our job, in addition to what I told you already, which is legislate, represent, investigate, is to renovate.
It seems to be you're headed in that direction. Is it at all levels of government? Are people happy with that? Or is there any movement to push it back toward the way it used to be, more partisan?
We will see.
Oh.
The new prime minister has not appointed any senators yet. And there are openings. And so everybody's watching to see what he will do. Prime Minister Carney, will he count on the same system that through which most current senators were appointed, which is the new independent appointment process, or will he scrap it? And we don't have any indication that he will scrap it, but we also haven't seen any evidence that he's going to use the new system.
That's interesting. Okay, so it's still up in the air as to whether or not.
Correct.
Yeah, I was going to say that, I think we should fix, sorry, go ahead.
But I would say Canadians, what do Canadians want? So Canadians still are not that interested in the Senate.
Right.
Or what they know very little about it, even though it's rather important because it's Canada's upper house of parliament. Or they heard about some scandals, maybe 20 years ago now, and the Senate is, sort of tainted by some scandals, which were, one or two individuals, and that's what people think of the Senate. But one of my colleagues, actually, who was a pollster in her life before she became an independent senator, has run a few polls to test what Canadians think of the Senate. They're gaining a more positive. They're still not fully positive yet on the Senate. But what they do like is this move towards independence. Canadians like that.
It does sound on the surface like the way it should be.
Yeah, and it's a part of the British parliamentary system. Like in India, we have upper house as well, where people get appointed, and it becomes partisan often. But I think the way I learned my civics is the sober second thought.
Correct.
Is how the
House of Sober Second Thought. Yes, it's the Westminster model. Yeah.
So let's talk about the climate again, because you were just at COP30, which I found fascinating.
Yes, I was.
Yeah, so this is obviously a big, important issue for you. So what are you working on? What is that committee working on? What are you trying to change about the Canadian approach to the climate and climate solutions?
Well, Senators for Climate Solutions, which is really an independent, self-organized group, like the All-Party Climate Caucus in the House of Commons. So one thing we're trying to do, as I mentioned previously, is we're trying to educate rank-and-file senators, whether they're on the Environment and Climate Change Committee or not, in all things climate. Climate and our economy, climate and health, as I mentioned, looking at issues related to AI and climate, just the whole gambit of what needs to be done to meet Canada's net zero emissions targets. That's the bottom line. We all sign on to get there, right?
Big tent part. Yeah. Okay. If I may pivot a little, I know we are reaching towards. I think I was going to say we should try and make her the permanent guest between Christmas and New Year every year.
Yes, I mean we're just scratching the surface. I feel like we could be here for hours.
Exactly. But I think I would like to pivot to ask you. So Canada has different levels of governments. Right, you have federal, you have provincial, you have the town and county, and you have the First Nations band councils. So, as a senator, how do you intersect or interact formally or informally with other forms and other levels of governments, if you can say a little bit, especially from Antigonish town and county point of view? Yeah,
well, for me, I guess three things. One, it's very important to have a good relationship with our municipal leaders, both at the town and county levels. And, I hosted the mayor and some councillors when they came to meet with other municipal leaders from across the country.
In Ottawa.
Wow. I hosted them, brought them into the Senate chamber, received them in my office. Also, when I bring my staff here, we would have a meeting. We had meetings with the previous town and council leaders. We also went to Bachtinkek to meet with the then chief and council, and under a previous regime at the provincial level, several of us Nova Scotia senators would meet with the premier. And we need to. It's up to us really to do that, and so we will do that. And I'll also meet with our local representatives here during COVID and in the time when there was a really difficult time with the Indigenous fishery. We met some representatives, another senator, myself, with Senator Dan Christmas. At the time, Dan's no longer a senator. And now Senator P.J. Prosper, who was the regional chief at the time, to look at issues related to the Indigenous fishery. So this is something that it was issue-specific that we were working on.
So you are it feels to me more so than other sorts of politicians, you are very actively going out to meet people. You are looking for information as part of the investigation thing. Is that how you would frame a senator's role?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's meeting with people locally. It's meeting with people who want to come see me in Ottawa. It's having a lot of phone conversations, online meetings, you name it. For instance, some groups here in the Maritimes were very concerned. They didn't see anything on nature in the most recent budget, and so we met online so I could understand that. And then when I was at COP30, then Minister responsible for nature, Stephen Guilbeault, was there, and I said, Minister Guilbeault, people in my area are wondering where was nature in the budget. He said, "Oh, it's coming. It's coming. I just had a meeting with the Prime Minister, and that's coming. It should be coming by early December." Still hasn't come, and he's no longer minister.
That's how that works. So that's fascinating. So I see you a lot here in town, and now I realize, because I'm trying to figure out what a senator does, as most people, and you are active in the community because you are getting information at all times. I feel like you are extremely busy. This is a very busy job. Is that correct?
I try not to use the busy word.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't think busy should be a badge of honor for anybody.
Fair.
Really, my plate is full. My plate is full in Ottawa,
Beautiful.
the 3 weeks out of 4 that I'm there. And weekends and other times when I'm home, it's full because I love living in this community.
Oh, thank you for coming in. And just Justin and I do this on the side, and such an honor to have you in this room recording this on this day. And as I said, I think we will make this a permanent feature every Christmas and New Year. I will have you here.
Or next week. The list of questions I have for you is enormous.
Come on, don't be greedy now, Justin. Come on.
We got a direct line to the...
Yeah. So the trick is, and let me out the secret now.
Okay, go.
The trick is to take her for a walk and have a conversation. So if you really want to pick her brain, so that's the trick.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you so much, Mary.
Yeah, appreciate you coming in.
My absolute pleasure, and Happy New Year to you too.
Happy New Year.
Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Antigonish. If you like the podcast, don't hesitate to subscribe. Just go to letstalkantigonish.ca and click. Voila! You'll receive new episodes right in your email inbox.
This podcast is a labor of love. Please consider making a contribution, small or large, maybe a monthly subscription. Depending on the level of public support, we would like to engage local producers and journalists to create more regular deep dive news stories about life here in Antigonish.
Right now, it's just Anuj and I doing this in our free time. You can read all about the podcast and ways to support us at letstalkantigonish.ca. And if you're a local business that wants to sponsor the podcast or even place an audio ad, we are certainly not opposed. A huge thank you to all of our subscribers, and especially our paid subscribers, which have helped us to buy the audio equipment that we needed to get this thing off the ground. And remember to get in touch with us if you have an idea for a future episode or a burning question about life in Antigonish that you want us to explore and get answers to. We welcome all feedback. Just email us at letstalkantigonish@gmail.com. Let's talk, Antigonish.